Means you too, Tim McCosker. And this guy's ready to tackle someone. He's on edge, so watch out. Not me. I'm speaking about our sergeants. Thank you. This is the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. I've been joined by Councilmember Gil Cedillo. Councilmember Mitch Englander will join us in a minute. He is at a press conference. Item number 6 is the director here. Item number 6. Director's report.
Okay. Wait.
Thank you, Chair. Michael LeGrand, Director of Planning. A few things to report. We have some really good news. Last year we had our Zoning Code Committee convene, the Zoning Advisory Committee, which is made up of members of the public as well as development community, to discuss our updates on the 1946 Zoning Code. We had all of our consultants in town for a week of intensive study and workshops that were very productive, and we're happy to meet that milestone. We've also been aggressively trying to hire more planners. We have 40 vacant positions at the planning assistant level we're currently hiring for. We interviewed over 300 applicants over the last 3 weeks, and those interviews will be concluding this week. And in early 2015, we'll be making job offers and bringing in some new resources to help with the over 26% increase in case filing we've had over the last fiscal year. In addition, last week at the Planning Commission, the PATH Homeless Shelter at Westmoreland Avenue was approved unanimously by the City Planning Commission, so we're happy to see that project come forward, and we'll be bringing that in the new year to the Plum Committee. And as you guys know, last Monday there was a devastating fire along Figueroa Street, and our Development Services Center at 201 North Figueroa was closed, as well as the 221 building at Figueroa was closed. We were able to still assist customers in our Van Nuys office, as well as the Department of Building and Safety was, and our Development Services counters did stay open in Van Nuys, and we reopened on Thursday in City Hall. We have staff working early hours to make sure applicants can get their applications filed at the Development Services Center downtown to make up for the 2 or 3 lost days in business that we did have. So we're happy to report our staff really stepped up and made sure that we could still maintain our high level of customer service even during those tragic shutdowns. So I'll be here for any questions. Looking forward to the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. LeGrand, and I believe there were some motions introduced to have a report to the full council on the impact of that fire that will be coming to council soon.
Great. We'll follow up on that.
Thank you. And with that, we'll note and file, receive and file item number 6 and move to item number 1. On item number 1, there's been a request to continue it to January 13th, 2015. We do have a number of speakers who are here. The real discussion will occur on the 13th. If you still wish to speak today, you can. I will call your name. Otherwise, you will have an opportunity again to address this issue on the 13th, but we will not have a presentation on this item today. First is the applicant, Laura Myers.
As you just mentioned, we will be doing the presentation. I'm representing the city, so
Okay.
I'll be speaking on the 13th.
Excellent. Thank you. Mitzi Mogul.
Mitzi Mogul, 1725 Wellington Road. As a qualified historic preservation consultant, I want the commissioners to know that this nomination is especially important as it represents an aspect of our history that has been overlooked, and for this reason alone, it should be designated. It is the work of a very important architect and associated with a significant cultural and religious institution. My opinion is based on my review of the documents and observation of the house itself when the house was open to the public for a multi-day estate sale conducted by the estate representative. Do not be persuaded, please, by the arguments of the opposition, which are filled with half-truths, misrepresentations, and irrelevant issues. The only question today and in January when you hear this again is whether the property meets the qualifications to be designated, which it most certainly does. Thank you.
Thank you. Roland Sosa.
Good afternoon. My name is Roland Souza, 1724 Westmoreland Boulevard. I represent West Adams Heritage Association. WAHA strongly endorses this nomination. The property has a unique history and deserves a place on the roster of HCMs. Any questions of spot zoning, master plans, highest and best use, or any other requests that might be made by the owner have nothing to do with its eligibility as an historic cultural monument. WAHA respectfully asks that this commission approve the nomination as put forth by Councilman Wesson. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey Samudio.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Ruzar. Jeff Samudio, qualified preservation consultant. I'm happy to say that I work for the owner representative on this project now, and I was one who had requested the 38-day continuance. I believe that we are nearing a meeting of the minds and that we will succeed in having both sides in support of a nomination. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Janet Hemming.
Jan Hemming, 1591 East Temple Way. Distinguished council members, the home at 2067 South Hobart in Los Angeles holds significant importance and historic value to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. For 21 years, it was the headquarters of our missionary operation in Southern California, where thousands of young missionaries lived and served. The most powerful and influential leaders of the church, whom we revere as prophets, apostles, and other authorities, stayed in the home, visited or held leadership meetings there. The prophets included David O. McKay, Heber J. Grant, and George Albert Smith, individuals whom will mean little to this esteemed body, but whom members of the church regard with sacred reverence. Dozens of apostles also worked in the home, and the mission presidents who served there included a two-term governor of Utah, a senator in the Utah legislature, prominent attorneys, and businessmen. These facts meet one of your criteria for a historic designation. We hope you make that choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Miller.
I'm here on behalf of the owner. Good afternoon. In light of the statement that you made that the hearing will be continued until the 13th, I'll basically reserve comment. I did want to state that the lack of notice to the owner initially, which appears to have been cured by the continuance, was an issue, but it seems to have been cured, so thank you.
Great, thank you. So we will continue this item till January 13th, 2015. Items number 2, we could approve on consent. If there's no objection. Moved by Mr. Dio, so ordered. Item number 3, we will approve. We need to move to approve the report with the additional instruction in the report. Moved by Mr. Cedillo, so ordered. Item number 5. If the city clerk, we have some speakers on this item. We are going to instruct the city clerk to, yes, sir. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. If I may interrupt you, for item 3, we need to include an additional directive. It should be read into the record. In addition to the 2 recommendations in the planning department report, we need to authorize the city controller to appropriate funding to front fund $200,000 from the reserve fund to an account in the planning department for this work. And in as much as this request impacts the reserve fund, the CAO should be requested to prepare a report.
We will approve this item with those additional instructions.
Thank you.
So ordered. Item number 5, can you read that into the record, please?
Sure. Item 5, Councilman, is a verbal status update from the planning department relative to the project at 1950 Avenue of the Stars in CD5.
Thank you. This item will be, we will request that the city clerk send notices for Plum to reconsider the project to review the project on January 13th, 2015, when the committee will hear the project's development agreement. We do have a few cards. I don't know if you wish to speak at this time. Ben Resnick.
Mr. Chair, Ben Resnick with Jeffer, Mangles, Butler, and Mitchell. Just one request on the continuance date, if that could be done January 20th instead of the 13th. I do represent all three major appellants, Beverlywood Homes Association, the Twin Towers in Century City, and the 2000 Avenue, the Stars Building, and the 2 Watt Towers in Century City. So we'd like to just make a request for January 20th for this hearing.
City Clerk, is that appropriate? If it's the representative for the appellants to do that?
It's the applicant that will.
It's the applicant, that's my understanding.
That will grant the extension. Now, it's up to the chair to decide for the whatever continuance date.
Yeah, I think it's my understanding that it's the applicant, unless the applicant is here and agrees to that, we will continue to have it on the 13th. Next speaker is Barbara Brody.
What on this? Is there a last date on which council must act?
When is the last date?
The last day to act is January 30th, 2015.
Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Brody? No Barbara Brody? Okay. DJ Moore? You're fine? Okay. Thank you. So we will continue that item till January 13th and request the city clerk to send notices for that item. Next item?
Next item, Councilman, is item 4, which is the draft sign district ordinance, billboard ordinance.
Thank you. And colleagues, we have this item before us today. The last time this committee heard and provided direction on the draft sign ordinance was in January of 2013. We did hear it on June of 2014, and that was a listening session to hear the status of the reports on the issues, but no action was taken at that time. Today, we are here for a report from planning on the ordinance and a few supplemental reports that they will have provided, and to discuss any needed revisions to the ordinance. We want to give as much time as possible to public comment to make sure we are making informed directions to the departments. There are extremely important set of issues to discuss today that will determine the regulations by which the city may establish future sign districts. Also, we must make important decisions regarding how to treat existing signage in our city. So first, with that, I would like to invite the planning department to the podium, please, to discuss some of the revisions. And we heard this before. Maybe you could give us a quick overview just to kind of refresh our memories and also to give us any updates as to anything that has happened or any supplementary reports since our last hearing on this item. And just to clarify, Mr. Bell, I'd like to ask a few questions. The ordinance in front of us today only places restrictions on establishment of new sign districts. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And for the record, remind us how much of the city would be available for sign districts under this new ordinance.
There would be an approximate 90% reduction in the area eligible to file for a sign district from today's code.
Okay, and also I'd like to know how long you've been working on this sign district, on this sign ordinance.
I believe planning department staff have been working on it, along with Daisy Moe from Code Studies, since 2008.
2008, okay. Well, thank you. And so just a quick overview, please, if you may.
Right. So we'll provide a 5-minute recap of the discussion that occurred on the 24th. There are 3 items before the committee. The first item is a draft of the city attorney's ordinance dated October the 17th. a separate report on administrative civil penalties and how they would apply to existing non-conforming billboards. And then the third item was a report on this issue of should the city permit off-site digital signs outside of sign districts. There was a limited discussion at the hearing on the 24th. There was discussion about whether or not the grandfathering date for initiated and applied for sign districts should be updated. The current ordinance references a date of December the 6th, 2011 as the grandfathering date, and in prior actions of this committee, the date had been amended to reflect the most recent meeting of Plum, so that might be an action that the committee might want to consider to update that grandfathering date to today's date. Second, there was a limited discussion about this issue of limited or general amnesty for those existing billboards that either do not have a permit on record or where there is a permit on record, there is a discrepancy in terms of what is actually on the ground and what the permit allows. In addition, since the June 24th hearing date, we have received 2 letters from different council offices requesting amendments. One letter from Council District 4 and a second letter from Council District 13. So that's a recap of the sort of the overview on the 24th. I'll just provide, again, just a very quick overview of the main issues and what the ordinance is intending to do. So back to the first ordinance drafted by the City Attorney's Office. The city initiated a ban on all off-site signs in 2002. And as part of that action, 12 years ago, the city also allowed exceptions from this ban through either sign districts, specific plans. Essentially, with both of those 2 exceptions, literally the entire city could be converted to a sign district, either through a sign district proper or through a specific plan. A lawsuit was filed overturning the ban. There proceeded a period of litigation, additional ordinances adopted by this council. The ban was upheld, but the appellate court issued a roadmap in the case of Worldwide Rush with some instructions, a blueprint for how the city could have a ban, but also have exceptions to this ban and do it in a way that was lawful. So this ordinance carries out the instructions issued by the Court of Appeal. It protects the city's policy to ban new billboards, but does it in such a way that the exceptions do not swallow the rule. So what is the heart of the new sign ordinance regulations? As I had mentioned before, there's a 90% reduction in the area that would be eligible to even file for a sign district. Of course, each individual sign district application would have to go through the usual legislative approval process of public hearings, CEQA, Planning Commission, and then the full council, of course, would adopt it. So what's before you today are a set of ground rules for how we should process these sign district applications. So the sign districts will be limited to downtown, regional centers, major stadiums, so those are stadiums of 50,000 or more seating capacity, the airport, the port, and then also in a prior meeting, the committee also listed the Los Angeles Zoo as an eligible site. There are additional protections for single-family neighborhoods, for parks, for the Los Angeles River, and ecological preserves. The ordinance codifies, for the first time, regulations on the brightness of digital displays. It includes standards both for nighttime and daytime standards, and it also includes a requirement for the installation of automatic sensors to make sure that the brightness of the digital displays does not exceed the city's standard, so they would be automatically adjusted. One of the instructions from the court was that if we are going to be granting exceptions from the ban, that they be done so in such a way that they further the objectives of the ban in the first place, namely that they improve community aesthetics, they reduce blight, or they improve traffic safety. So in light with that court's instruction, The ordinance also includes a requirement that for every new sign that goes up, more than 1 square footage of existing sign must come down within a defined area that would be outlined within the ordinance. So under that rule, more signs would have to come down than could come up. In a prior action of Plum, up to half of that sign reduction ratio could be, in a sense, paid for through listed community benefits. And there are a number of different community benefits that are outlined within the ordinance. All of them are physical, tangible benefits that would improve community aesthetics. And there would have to be a particular finding that would have to be made that if a community benefits program was approved, that it would be substantially equivalent to the greater than 1-for-1 sign reduction ratio. The second issue that is before the committee has to do with administrative civil penalties, and that's another key part of the sign ordinance before you. We had reported on the civil penalties that New York City has employed to great effect with over 13,000, I believe, individual penalty citations since they have issued these kinds of administrative civil penalties, and 3,000 digital billboards have come down. One of the issues that has to be resolved by this committee has to do with approximately 1,000 signs where there is not a permit on record, and or those signs where there is a permit on record, but there's a discrepancy between the permit and what is actually on the ground. Which signs should be subject to the penalties or not, whether or not this committee would want to entertain any amnesty provisions for that. We addressed this issue from a narrow legal enforcement perspective and recommended that those signs where there is no permit on record be granted amnesty because we would not be able to prevail in the considered opinion of the city attorney and the Department of Building and Safety. For those signs where there is no permit on record, for those signs where we do have a permit on record, we believe that the Department of Building and Safety and the city attorney would be able to prevail in any kind of enforcement action on those signs. Again, it's a policy matter that would be before the committee, a limited versus a general amnesty, but our report focused squarely on the enforcement issue and what would be the city's best path relative to enforcement. And then the third issue is a separate report issued by the Planning Department, had to do with a higher level policy question relative to whether or not digital signs should be allowed outside of sign districts. Under the current draft of the ordinance, we would only allow digital billboards within established sign districts, and that we would be limiting those new sign districts to the areas identified before, downtown, regional centers, and so on. This is a very controversial issue, pros and cons on both sides of the question. We outline some experience of other cities that have gone down this particular path, including Sacramento, Chicago, and Santa Clarita. We outline 3 options. The first option would be to only allow digital signs in sign districts. Essentially, it would be take no further action on this issue. The second option would be to consider them, but only on city property, relying upon Metro Lights and the street furniture program. And this is a model, for example, that Chicago has employed. And then a third option would be a little bit of both. Both consider such signage both on city property as well as on private property. So that is a recap of the discussion and the recommendations to date, and we can answer any questions that the committee might have.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. And just wondering if we should take questions from our staff right now or after public comment. Why don't we just take them now? Want to go public? We'll do. We have a number. Can you reiterate the 3 points that you just mentioned right now?
On the signs outside of sign districts?
Yes.
Yeah. The first option that we outlined in our report, essentially it's a take no further action or a do nothing option, meaning that the council's action would be to limit billboards and other forms of off-site advertising only in sign districts. That would be the only mechanism to allow those exceptions from the ban. So that's the first option. The second option would be to allow digital signs and other kinds of billboards outside of sign districts, but only on property owned by the City of Los Angeles. So that's the public option. And there the path would be, the city would be able to enter into, for example, as Chicago did, revenue sharing agreements. Because we are the landlord, we have greater controls and greater latitude to, for example, impose requirements on the content of the messages. For example, in Chicago, 1 out of 8 messages has to be a public service announcement. And in their contract with the winning sign company, they negotiated an agreement where the city would be able to take over, in a sense, the digital sign network in the cases of public emergency. And the third option would be a little bit of both to entertain digital signs outside of sign districts, both on public property as well as on private property.
Thank you. Mr. Englander?
Just since I was a few minutes late, can you start over from the beginning? No, I'm just kidding. I had my briefing yesterday, so I appreciate you coming in and walking me through everything as well. So I'm up to speed. Public comment would be great.
And that was the Reader's Digest version. We're going to ask you for the encyclopedia version. No, thank you. We'll go to public comment now, and then we'll come back to you with some questions.
All right.
We'll call 2 speakers at a time. So the second speaker I call, if you could prepare yourself and come up behind the person who's actually speaking. Dennis Hathaway, Barbara Brody. Just as a reminder, public speakers have 1 minute each.
Good afternoon. I'm Dennis Hathaway. I'm president of the Coalition to Ban Billboard Blight. I've been to every one of the hearings, I think it's 16 now, on this sign ordinance, and I think I've said about everything that can be said. But just to reiterate, we want this sign ordinance on the books. We support the limitation of sign districts to the regional centers. We believe that digital billboards should be restricted to sign districts. We're opposed to amnesty for billboards without permits. They should be looked at on a one-to-one basis. And the big thing is the takedown ratio. I think you probably all saw the article in the LA Times by Dave Zonheiser about what some other cities are doing, and they're getting a lot more than what is proposed here. So I think would really urge you to look at that before you put that into place. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Brody, Frank Lima.
Barbara Brody, President, Westwood South of Santa Monica Boulevard Homeowners, and a member of the Coalition to Ban Billboard Board, Westside Neighborhood Council as well. We've all voted to support the sign ordinance because we are desperate to have regulation on this industry in our city. The billboard outdoor advertisers have everything to gain, and the citizens of Los Angeles have everything to lose. Our visual environment is at risk. We've got to have a mandatory takedown requirement that exceeds 1/2 to 1 or 1 to 1. Digital billboard brings in up to $125,000 a month in income, and they're willing to take down a half a billboard in exchange? That's ridiculous. This council needs to stand up and get a removal that is meaningful so that we can remove the blight. Under the current proposal, the way this is being watered down, we could end up with significantly more billboards across Los Angeles than we have today. And that, my friends, after 16 or more hearings, is a sin. It's a failure. So we ask you to act strong. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank Lima. Excuse me. Kim Goldman.
Good afternoon. Frank Lima, president of UFLAC, representing firefighters. You might ask, why is the president of the Firefighters Union here speaking on this today? I'm here in favor of a sensible outdoor signage policy because the city desperately needs revenue for public safety efforts. Much needed revenue will allow departments like the LAFD to continue to provide the best service that our residents have come to expect. Digital signs are a great option to bring in new revenue to address basic service needs like fixing our aging infrastructure, and could allow us to hire additional firefighters the city desperately needs because the LAFD has been decimated. Additionally, law enforcement has used digital signage with success for a long time. Digital signs provide immediate communication with the public during natural and man-made disasters. Changing information can be updated remotely, guaranteeing current and critical details are broadcast during emergencies. Our LAFD red flag warnings during the brush season present a critical need to communicate with the public about fire concerns, temporary parking restrictions, and safety. So we encourage you to support and see the greater public benefit of enacting a simplified billboard ordinance that will create more revenue and good jobs for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim Goldman, Ron Miller.
My name is Kim Goldman, and I am a proud advocate for crime victims' rights. I've assumed this role not by choice, but rather as a result of the horrific events that surrounded my brother, Ron Goldman, and Nicole Brown in their murder 20 years ago in Brentwood, California. In addition to the many hats I wear as a community leader, I'm an active board member for the National Center for Victims of Crime, where along with my colleagues, I advocate for stronger rights, resources, and services for victims and survivors. While tremendous progress has been made at the federal and state levels in securing some protections for victims of crime, there's much more work that needs to be done. Whether it's a sister looking for justice for her brother's murder, or the family frantically waiting for the safe return of their 4 children who were abducted last week in Montebello, or as we were all paralyzed with Charles Dorner's terrorizing us with his violence, the public safety benefits that electronic billboards provide result in substantial community benefits to individuals, families, and communities who have, are, or will face insurmountable situations. Digital billboards allow real-time emergency information to be delivered directly to the community from federal, state, and local law enforcement and other public agencies. While we can't deny that more revenue to the city and local business is very important, we can't ignore the emotional revenue generated by human life.
Thank you. Ron Miller, Priscilla Chang.
Good afternoon, Councilman. I'm Ron Miller, Executive Secretary of the LA Orange County Building Trades. Represent 140,000 craftsmen and women in LA and Orange County. Many of them live in the city of Los Angeles. And we have agreements with a couple of these billboard companies. They see the value in our craftsmanship. We want a responsible billboard policy. We have agreements to demo the old billboards and put up the new digital billboards in a safe manner. We're working with a lot of cities around the city of LA. A lot of the cities around the city of LA are taking advantage of good billboard policy, and it's a tangible asset to the city. It can bring money to the general fund if it's done in the right way. We urge you to move forward with this and make it a good billboard policy. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's get it done so we can put more people to work and have a better community. Thank you.
Thank you. Priscilla Chang.
Good afternoon.
Ed McKeegan.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Priscilla Chang, here today on behalf of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, and someone in the back reminded me, it's probably the last time I'm going to be saying this, on behalf of Maria Elena Durazo. I think the first thing that you asked one of the staff earlier was, how long have you been working at this? Since 2008. We've elected a new president, a new mayor, and even at the LA County Federation of Labor, we elected a new secretary-treasurer. So it's time we move forward with a responsible digital sign ordinance. As the brothers took all my talking points earlier from the firefighters and the trades, but this will create the revenue that we need to ensure public safety and reinvest in our communities to create city services, allow us to get out a message to our community faster during public emergencies, and create good jobs, which we need. We're still now, in the city of Los Angeles, have 46% of workers earning less than $15 an hour, and this will kickstart it in a good way. And so we're happy that some of these billboard companies are working with our building trades to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ed McKeegan, Samantha Beasley.
Hello, my name is Ed McKeegan. I'm president of MEI Real Estate Services. We improve a number of retail centers around the region, and many times when we do this, it costs quite a bit of money to do so, and sometimes you need additional funds. Signage income can really help improve centers that we have where they wouldn't otherwise be able to be improved. And so we are in favor of reasonable sign on private property throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Samantha Beasley, Vincent Daniels.
Good afternoon. My name is Samantha Beasley, and I'm here representing the LA Area Chamber of Commerce, our 1,600 members, and the nearly 750,000 people they employ throughout our region. Chairman Huizar and members of the Plum Committee, thank you for your leadership on this important issue. With more than 6,000 small and large businesses depending on the marketing opportunities outdoor advertising provides, the billboard industry is essential to our local economy. Although we feel that the current draft sign ordinance falls short in several areas, it has made significant strides for outdoor advertising in LA. In addition, we encourage the city to develop a solution to address off-site digital signs that includes public and private compensation in order to maximize benefits to the community, improving public safety, and helping our small businesses prosper. Again, on behalf of the Chamber, thank you.
Thank you. Vincent Daniels, Ed Wasserman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Vincent Daniels, and I live at 6522 La Miranda Avenue, near the panels of Melrose and La Brea in Melrose and Fairfax. I lived near these signs for 10 years and believe the benefits the billboard provide to our economy, community, and public agencies far outweigh any negativities. I've been seeing these signs used to promote a huge variety of causes, ranges from drought awarenesses to drunk drivers and human trafficking that hit home in our community. Thanks for the opportunity to address you today. I hope you consider the virtual role that signs play in our community and work towards a legislative solution allowing the reasonable use for digital signs in our community, our city. Thank you and happy holidays.
Thank you. Ed Wasserman, Doug Assernault.
Good afternoon. We favor a sensible sign ordinance. Digital billboards do provide great advantages to a city to include federal, state, and local emergency alerts. Possible new revenues do help in paying for additional fire, police, staff. Other major cities across the country have drafted and approved legislation for digital billboards, yet we are still in the same place that we began in 2008. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Assernault, Yoli Acosta.
Good afternoon. I'm Doug Arsenault of the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, VICA. VICA wishes to thank the Planning Department for undergoing this seemingly insurmountable process and their willingness to work with the signage industry and their broad client base to find mutually beneficial solutions. In light of the recent court decision, we hope that the city will maintain its commitment not to over-regulate property owners' on-site signage used to attract customers to their own businesses. Furthermore, the city cannot forget about the importance of digital signage on both public and private property. In adopting a clear digital sign policy, the city will be able to generate revenues from sign companies and obtain much-needed funding for community benefits, individual communities, including streetscape, traffic, and safety improvements. Digital signs also allow our government to share critical community service information with a proven track record of promoting public safety and help bring Angelinos together. Digital signage is particularly important for our signature motion picture and television industry. For example, following major awards or highly successful opening weekends, CU can cost-effectively modify an advertisement on a digital billboard to reflect and incorporate achievement of a particular film. We look forward to a comprehensive sign ordinance that supports a business-friendly environment in LA that creates and maintains local jobs and businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Yoli Acosta, Antonio Sanchez.
Randy Munoz in place of Yoli Acosta.
I'm sorry, sir. I would love to allow you to speak, but we have to be consistent with everyone. We do not allow people to substitute. So if you could fill out a card, you're welcome to fill out your own card and then submit it to the gentleman here. Okay, thank you. Antonio Sanchez, George Yu.
Good afternoon, council members. Antonio Sanchez. I'm here on behalf of IBW Local 11. We represent about 12,000 members here in LA County, lots of them working for the city of Los Angeles. Today you heard from one of our members that's on our out-of-work list, here in support of the staff report. I want to thank the staff. You've been working on this since 2008. That's a long time. But I also want to speak in support of the public-private option. As many opportunities that we can create to have more revenue for the city, to increase public safety, and to create jobs, because of course this is a major reason why we're here, so we can continue bringing in more people to our apprenticeship program and getting people back to work. Thank you.
Thank you. George Yu, Rachel Horning.
Good afternoon. My name is George Yu. I'm the Executive Director of the Chinatown Business Improvement District. Our property owners, merchants, and CBOs all benefit from the use of billboards. Our property owners receive much needed income. Businesses of all sizes depend on the billboards to get their message out. And nonprofits receive access to signage that helps better connect with the community. The city will derive income from this as well. We urge the committee to move forward with a new sign ordinance that makes a more modernized sign ordinance that allows for the use of digital signs. And we know that other cities nationwide has done so as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel Horning. Ryan Young.
I have 2 letters to hand out. Okay, thanks. Good afternoon. I'm Rachel Horning, speaking on behalf of BizFed, the Los Angeles County Business Federation, a grassroots alliance of 125 major business organizations representing 268,000 businesses with 3 million employees throughout our region. I'm here to express support for the outdoor advertising industry's efforts to work with the city to find a legislative solution for digital signs in the city of Los Angeles. For businesses, community organizations, and public agencies in neighborhoods across the city, billboards and digital signs are important tools for advertising, marketing, public communication, and community engagement. Digital billboards offer an opportunity to change messages in real time, making it possible for advertisers, law enforcement, and other public safety agencies to rapidly reach large audiences quickly and efficiently with important and sometimes life-saving messages. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan Young, Rabbi Jonathan Klein.
Good afternoon. My name is Ryan Young, and I represent Yesco Electronics. We're a national manufacturer of digital electronic signs. We're here today to encourage you to adopt a simplified ordinance regulating billboards, both static and digital, and more specifically, to take a strong look at the more progressive option of allowing these displays on both private and public property. In today's economy, digital billboards have been called a game changer that have significantly helped businesses and the community. By adopting reasonable regulations, you will be encouraging anyone who uses billboards to invest in this new technology, a technology that's been found safe as verified by independent studies. The technology allows for simple control of brightness and hold times to satisfy the community's aesthetic standards, and our clients, both municipal and private, have experienced no problems with digital billboards in their communities. We support the efforts of the coalition and hope you will act to provide the city of Los Angeles with a reasonable regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Rabbi Jonathan Klein, Piedmont Brown.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Rabbi Jonathan Klein with Clergy and Laity, United for Economic Justice, and we're in a city that is one of the few cities that has not yet figured out how to pass a reasonable ordinance. And yet this is a city where we're going to need those digital signs when the big earthquake comes, when there's a moment of crisis. These are a way to ensure good communication with our community that is going to be in desperate need at those moments. We're supportive of this at CLU because we understand that this is a significant revenue stream to the city. We want to see these things built. We know that it is being done with the best labor practices at heart. Right now, money is being left on the table that could be going to support this city. Tonight is Hanukkah, and it's the beginning of the darkest time of the year. We see these signs out all over the place. It's a problem. We want to see them back up and running. Thank you.
Thank you. Piedmont Brown, Raquel Zamora.
Good afternoon. My name is Piedmont Brown. I'm the president of the Ironworkers of Los Angeles. The whole world's gone digital. I don't see why we need to hold Los Angeles back to a tool that's going to be very vital to the Los Angeles people of the city. The Ironworkers support this. I hope you guys do also. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Raquel Zamora, Alex Avelar.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. My name is Raquel Zamora, and my small business, Zamora Brothers, was founded by my grandfather 45 years ago. We are proud to be a staple in the Boyle Heights community. As a business owner, I urge the City of Los Angeles to provide clear guidelines for reasonable use of billboards, providing certainty for businesses in our communities. Digital billboards also provide opportunities for small businesses and nonprofit organizations in our community to connect the community and thrive in the years to come. For economics, benefits, community benefits, and potential benefits for the City of Los Angeles itself, adopting a sign ordinance, including the use of digital signs, is simply the right thing to do. The time is now for common sense sign policy in the City of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex Alivar, Richard Pink.
Huh?
You're Alex?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Alex Avalar, and I live at 12126 Oxnard Street in North Hollywood, near the panel on Chandler and Lankershim. Billboards, like so many other features throughout Los Angeles, are a natural part of our neighborhoods. They contribute to the urban feel of our great city while providing businesses, both local and national, an effective and affordable advertising tool, ultimately helping grow the local economy. As a premier city for business and entertainment, Los Angeles should embrace this important tool, as so many other cities have done, and provide the clear guidelines the businesses, community organizations, and so many others need for the reasonable use of these signs. A comprehensive sign ordinance is good for the city, our business, and our communities, and I urge you to take this opportunity to work towards a common sense sign policy. Thank you.
I know, excuse me, Mr. Chair, we've got
Sure.
a number of speaker cards.
My name is Richard Pink.
For
and I'm
one
the-
second.
One second,
One
Mr.
second.
Pink.
I was just going to say, we've got a number of speaker cards still, and I was going to ask if you do come up and speak, if it's already been stated from a previous speaker, feel free to be brief. Brevity, no. So if it's been stated, though, I would urge you to simply say that I support the comments that were stated earlier. But I have a feeling, by looking through some of the cards, the big stack we've got here, we're going to hear a lot of probably the same, which is okay. If you want to use your entire time, that's fine too. Thanks.
Richard Pink and Lawrence Stokes.
Thank you very much. My name is Richard Pink, and I'm the owner of Pink's Hot Dogs. And although you may know of Pink's as a landmark, we are a small business, we are a family business, and we depend on digital billboards in order to help our business. It was critical in the future, the growth of Pink's Hot Dogs, to be able to advertise on billboards, and digital billboards were crucial to the success of our family business. We've enjoyed the benefits of having these digital billboards, both from a standpoint of advertising on them, as well as the revenue, and that type of revenue keeps a small business like us operating and prospering and contributing to the enjoyment of people throughout Los Angeles. And I recommend and I urge you all to come to a legislative solution for allowing digital billboards to continue. And I thank you very much for your support. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Lawrence Stokes, Peter Repovich.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen included. As you can see, I have my hat on backwards because I'm trying to move forward. And with the support of the billboards play in our cities, because of the real-time nature, and digital billboards in particular provide our community and law enforcement agencies with a valuable tool and quick, efficiently relays critical information to the public. I repeat, a valuable tool to quickly and effectively relay critical information to the public. And during these days and times, that's what we need with the crisis we are going on. These signs should be made available as they have been in the past for continued public safety messaging, including Amber Alerts for kids and FBI Most Wanted for dangerous criminals, and to neutralize disasters like earthquakes and acts of terror, which we have going on in our society today. So it will be efficient for us to have these billboards. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. I hope you consider the significant benefits of these signs provide, which I have personally witnessed in my day-to-day living. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Peter Repovich, Leon Vaughn, and
how do you get better than Pinks? That's what I got to say. Peter Repovich, Police Protective League. We support the billboard policy. It's really important that we get someplace on this issue. Obviously, the revenue, the city of Los Angeles could help use the revenue, and it's only the fair thing to do is to come up with a policy that affects everybody in a positive way. The city can go forward. Thank you very much.
thank you, Mr. Repovich. Leon Vaughn, or Van, Cindy Starrett, or Starrett. Stacy Miller, after Cindy. Starrett.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Cindy Starrett from Latham & Watkins. After years of sign litigation, the recent decision in the Lamar case demonstrates that the city needs to make changes to its sign code. The city's current sign ban was found unconstitutional, so option 1 is not the most legally defensible option. Moving forward with public and private signage allows the public benefits that you've heard about today, it allows for sign reduction, and it is also the most legally defensible option before you today. Reducing signs and creating real and tangible aesthetic and traffic safety benefits is something cities that surround Los Angeles have already moved forward to do. Long Beach, West Hollywood, Culver City, cities around LA are looking at digital signs. They want those entertainment industry jobs. They want to create the advertising for Los Angeles consumers. We should have those benefits here in Los Angeles with clear and consistent rules. The city should be a leader on this, and we look forward to your direction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Stacy Miller, James Johnson.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Stacy Miller. I represent the Los Angeles Advertising Coalition. The coalition is comprised of Clear Channel Outdoor, Lamar Advertising, Outfront Media, formerly CBS Outdoor, Daktronics, and Yesco. Combined, our coalition has about 95% of the outdoor advertising inventory in the city of Los Angeles. Out of respect for time, knowing that you do have so many speakers, I will speak on behalf of the coalition and its member companies. We respectfully request that we do move forward with a comprehensive sign regulation that will benefit the city, the community, and the industry. With digital sign policies in more than 450 municipalities in 43 states, we're urging you to follow the best practices of cities throughout the country. Through a comprehensive ordinance, communities in Los Angeles can realize significant billboard reduction and relocation of boards, and the city can realize significant revenue and community benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. James Johnson, Phil Recht.
I'm going to take Councilmember Englander's advice to heart. James Johnson, SEIU, Local 721. We represent 10,000 city workers who frankly struggle day in and day out to provide quality public services against odds. Why this has not come to pass in 7 years makes no sense to our organization, and this is the first time 721 is actually taking a position on signs. But this is long overdue. We need to get about the business of finding out, figuring out, you know what the record of Local 721 and our partner organizations are about trying to identify revenue in this city. So it's a no-brainer for us. We need to get this done. Thank you. And happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Phil Recht, James Carpentier.
Good afternoon. Phil Recht on behalf of Summit Media. Summit supports the new civil fines as a way to defer future violations of the law. However, we disagree with this proposal to exempt only some of the existing signs, but not all of them, from the fines. The planning department says it's important to exempt existing signs that were put up without a permit whatsoever because, given the state's 5-year presumption rule, the city could never successfully enforce the fines against those signs. But the identical logic applies to those signs that were put up with a permit but that have minor variations from the specs. The 5-year law applies to those signs as well, and if the city brought enforcement actions, it would result in a nightmare of litigation, and given the poor state of the city's records, the city would never win one of those cases either. And beyond that, it's just not fair to exempt the really bad actors, those that put up signs without a permit whatsoever, but to provide no protection to those who did. So we just ask you whatever you do, to treat both these groups of signs the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. James Carpentier, David Goldberg.
Hello, James Carpentier here on behalf of the California Sign Association and the International Sign Association. Mr. Chairman and honorable members of the committee, thanks for allowing me to speak. The California Sign Association has served the on-premise sign industry for over 50 years, and for the past 5+ years, we've worked diligently with staff, and staff has also worked very diligently on crafting this code based upon reasonable standards and some scientifically based information, taking into account communication and aesthetic needs of all types of signage. And we've also partnered with over half a dozen stakeholder community groups, CCALA, hotel, motel, car dealers, restaurant association, to name a few, and conducted a number of other studies, too, related to what I just talked about. And there's a distinction, as is made in this current draft, between on-premise and off-premise signs, and we urge the city to retain that distinction and agree with the recommendations of staff to approve the sign code, and also one additional point, the creation of the sign unit we think is critical. Thank you very much.
Thank you. David Goldberg, John Howland.
Chair Weezar and honorable committee members David Goldberg of Armbruster, Goldsmith, and Delvac. Our firm represents the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, which is pursuing entitlements to adaptively reuse the historic May Company Wilshire department store and construct an adjacent new wing to house what would be a world-renowned Academy Museum on the Miracle Mile. The project includes a proposed sign district which would allow for the identification of sponsors and donors that underwrite the nonprofit museum's events and exhibitions. You have a letter in the file from Councilmember Labange, which correctly noted that museums and cultural institutions traditionally acknowledge donors and sponsors as part of exhibition announcements. And the permissibility of this practice should be recognized in the new ordinance. And so we support the request in that letter that such donor recognition signage be permitted in either a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 sign district and not regulated as off-site signage. This type of signage doesn't implicate the same types of issues that off-site signage does and should not be subject to takedown provisions. We also support the updating of the grandfathering date. Thank you.
Thank you. John Howland, Heather Krosner.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee. I'm John Howland with the Central City Association. I'll try and be brief, Mr. Englander. We support the differentiation between on-site, off-site signs. Second, with the exception of the greater downtown housing incentive areas, sign districts must be a minimum of 15 acres or 5,000 linear feet of street frontage. We believe this is too large. We do appreciate the exemption for the downtown Los Angeles area, but CCA believes that the 2,460 linear feet is still too burdensome for downtown. These requirements effectively tie the hands of decision makers such as yourselves and yet again apply a one-size-fits-all model citywide, something that we've seen time and again rarely works. Thirdly, sign impact areas and sign reductions should be clearer and more flexible in their regulations so that applicants may have a reasonable expectation that when the city will demand either community benefits or take down, that there is in a specific area that it is a significant area to have impact so they can make those switches. With that, I'll thank you.
Thank you. Heather Krosner, Renee Weisner.
Good afternoon. My name is Heather Krosner from Latham & Watkins. I'm here to testify on behalf of the newest Major League Soccer team, the Los Angeles Football Club. The LA Football Club is extremely excited to bring a new team and stadium to Los Angeles, and we appreciate all the cooperation we've received from the council office and from planning. We understand that the proposed ordinance currently allows sign districts only for stadiums 50,000 seats or greater, and we ask that the sign district provisions be modified to cover stadiums of 20,000 seats or more, which would include the football club's new stadium. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Now from Council District 4, Renee. After Renee, Jose Aguilar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Renee Weitzer, representing Councilman Tom Labange. In August of 11th of 2014, we sent a letter to the committee regarding some provisions that we would like to have incorporated. We'd like to have the committee instruct the department of planning to include provisions that would reasonably protect museums and cultural institutions so that they can have the traditional exhibition, announcements, and sponsorship. In particular, the ordinance should provide sign district rules which museums and cultural institutions should be allowed to acknowledge exhibition and event sponsors and donors that underwrite their nonprofit activities. Such exhibition signs should not be subject to takedown or community benefit provisions proposed under Section 1311F. Such exhibition signage should be allowed in either Tier 1 or Tier 2. We would like you to support that and instruct the department to include that when it comes to full council.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jose Aguilar, Randy Munoz.
My name is Jose Aguilar. I have served on the neighborhood councils both in Lincoln, Boyle Heights, and El Sereno for 6 years. I also served on the Adelante East Side Adelante redevelopment project for another 6 years. So I'm deeply involved in my community. I support digital billboards, but I have some reservations. I do not want digital billboards to be used for political or religious purposes because it's extremely antagonizing to the community at large. Number two, I would like to have an amenities fund set aside, maybe 7 or 8%, to the region's neighborhood councils or for community organizations. And third, I believe that this is a good thing to have because we could have Amber Alerts, FBI Most Wanted postings, kidnapping, traffic accidents, partial license plate could be listed and put out there in the community to find people that do hit and runs. We recently had a hit and run in Lincoln Heights, and it was tragic, and we need this for crime prevention. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy Munoz, Mark Levinson.
Thanks for seeing me. Randy Munoz, Latino Diabetes Association, home address 4936 Seldner Street, Los Angeles, 90032. I'm going to make it short and sweet. We are in favor of this ordinance if it's done the right way and limited and restricted. What does the Latino Diabetes Association have to do with digital media? Well, we're hoping that getting awareness of diabetes, this could be another venue, another outlet for that. Aside from the various safety applications that could be done for, Amber Alerts and so forth, and fire and emergency preparedness, getting the message out, not only that diabetes exists, everybody knows that, but getting tested for diabetes, which we've been advocating for many years now, getting early detection, getting tested for diabetes. We feel that this might be a very powerful tool of outreach and marketing. So we hope that you would do what you can to approve this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mark Levinson.
Good afternoon. I will adopt Councilman Englander's suggestion to be brief and not repeat. We support the ordinance. Digital signs are here. We should regulate them reasonably. I think there are benefits to the city of Los Angeles. There are benefits to the workers in the city of Los Angeles. There's an area that we need to expand. Other cities are doing it. We need to also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I could ask staff to please come up to the table. And I have a couple of quick questions. Number one is that the ordinance as currently proposed has a takedown ratio for new sign districts of 1-to-1 unless community benefits are provided, in which case it would be 0.5-to-1. What type of ratios do other cities have, and do other cities make a distinction between digital and static signage with respect to the breakdown?
Alan Bell, Planning Department. It's actually a greater than 1-for-1 ratio, but the other part of your synopsis of the provisions is correct, that up to 1/2 of the takedown ratio could be, in a sense, purchased through community benefits. some of the other cities that I'm actually going to let Daisy Moe answer the question in terms of other communities, in terms of what their particular takedown ratios are. There's a wide variety of different ratios.
Daisy Moe, Planning Department. I'm actually looking for my information here. There has been a variety of takedown ratios in other cities. Quite a few examples that are greater than 1 to 1. I remember seeing 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, somewhat commonly in other cities. And I'll see if I can find my exact data here in a past report.
But most other cities had a greater ratio, correct?
There has been a variety of different ratios, but I don't recall seeing anything less than 1 to 1 off the top of my head.
Great, thank you. And my other question is, for the record, I was wondering if you have this available. If not, I will follow up. But did the CPC previously act to include a prohibition for on-site digital signage in the version approved by CPC in 2009?
Yes, the CPC did.
They did do that back in 2009.
Correct.
Right? And is that that's not in the ordinance today, is it? Or
No, there was a prior instruction from the previous plum to not address the issue of on-site signs. So under today's rules, on-site signs can be digital signs. Under the draft of this ordinance, on-site signs could be digital. They would have to comply with the digital display regulations and standards for daytime and nighttime brightness.
Okay, and how do we treat off-site signs and mural signs that were approved before the city's current sign ordinance that went into effect in 1986?
Well, certainly before we included mural signs in the general prohibition, of course, the mural ordinance defined a separate class of mural signs as not including any kind of commercial content whatsoever. Prior to 2002, the city regulated digital signs and billboards through spacing requirements, size requirements, and actually those limitations are currently still within the code. They're not in effect because we have superseded them with the general citywide ban.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Ms. Jangler?
If I could add, sorry, Daisy Moe from the Planning Department, in regard to your previous question, I did find a couple more figures on sign takedown ratios in other cities.
Sure.
And this was in our report of October 10th, 2013.
Yeah.
And like I had said previously, they were generally higher than 1 to 1. San Antonio varied from 2 to 1 to 4 to 1. Dallas, we found 3 to 1. And Orlando, 4 to 1.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jangler?
Yeah, thank you. I don't think we've studied this enough. I'm just kidding. Okay, so a couple things that, in hearing the speakers and reading all the testimony and the documents, first and foremost, while this has been going on for a very long time, and I believe it will continue to based on some of the, as we're flushing out some of the details, and I think we need to flush it out because what we've seen here, for those of you that have not been engaged in this discussion from the beginning, and I don't mean the industry, I mean a lot of the city family that has come forward, particularly some of the representatives saying that there's a lot of revenue on the table and all these other issues. Know that it's not because the city hasn't been willing to come up with some type of regulation, restrictions, conditions, a new ordinance, profit-sharing ideas, all of those things that have and continue to be explored. And I think it's important to say this because there's some new players as well at the table. A lot of the folks who have been fighting, any and all billboards, the community folks as well in the neighborhoods, all of you know exactly where things have been. But to some of the folks who had showed up for the first time and saying, you know, we need to do more to look at revenue ideas and while we're protecting the community, know that every time we turn around to do anything, we end up in court. And the city family, particularly the planning department, has really done a tremendous job in constantly and continuously collaborating with the community, looking at best practices, continuously researching what's happening in other municipalities and best cases cited in courts, working with our city attorney's office. It's a very delicate and very complicated issue that needs to be worked out correctly and comprehensively. And so I want to state that for the record, because a lot of this has been done, quite frankly, under our chairman's leadership and giving that direction and making sure that we cross our T's and dot our I's. And a lot of people have said out there that that Plum or the city has been dragging its feet in this, and quite frankly, I don't think that there's been anybody more engaged on the city council in wanting to do this, but do it correctly, than council member and our chairman, Jose Huizar. So I want to give him a lot of credit for making sure we do things correctly, and that's important, because then it just ties up more taxpayer funds in litigation, and so we move on, but we do it right. So if you don't mind that I said that.
No,
okay.
great. Thank you.
So with that, I do have, I wanted to do a deeper dive into some of these things. First and foremost, on the draft ordinance. And let's look at these three separate sections if we can. Because everybody's throwing this into one lump sum, into like this is a one vote, one finality, and it's actually not. There's an ordinance that we're talking about for offsite. There is the digital issue on offsite. And so we've got to look at and bifurcate some of these issues and the on-site issues. So first and foremost on the draft, it was asked and answered about the specific sign districts increasing the takedown ratio and what are the best practices. While staff has suggested that it currently says greater than a 1-to-1 or community benefits for static, or greater than the 2-to-1 or community benefits for digital, I'd like to see the word and instead of or. So replaced with the greater than and community benefits for both static and digital. Number two, the chairman did ask about this, but I'd like to do a deeper dive on this. It was asked and answered, but the prohibition of on-site digital signs are not part of the current ordinance. I'd like to add that, so there is a prohibition on on-site digital. That request is coming directly from the mayor, and I'd like to offer that up on his behalf in conversation with his staff. So I will share that this will end up at some point on his desk for signature as well, so that's their request. And it makes sense because, quite frankly, and I've researched that as well, it's very possible, and there's a process to approve through other review processes for those specific signs and locations for on-site. So that shouldn't be an issue. On sign adjustments and or the on-site relocation, I'd like to see the ability to make minor adjustments that are reasonable. And so on-site relocations, allowing a property owner to relocate an existing off-site sign within that property. So we should have some flexibility. So I'd like to see that. And while you're feverishly writing all this down, I'll share a copy with you as well, and walk you through my thoughts on that and flood it out. Okay, so on in regarding to, there was one speaker that talked about a stadium at 50,000 seat capacity. I'd like to see that changed as well, and not for probably their reason, but my own. It's my dream and hope that we actually do get a stadium or an arena. And then, in fact, let's add and change that to say stadium or arena. And or. That's what I say, yeah, or. And or arena. And not at 50,000 seats, but 20,000. Because it's my dream that we actually get one in the San Fernando Valley at some point in time, that we get a 20,000 seat plus arena for the Valley. So I'd like to see that arena or stadium and lower to a 20,000 seat capacity, which is still pretty big. On the amnesty options, in looking at this, and it's a little confusing, but I think I've narrowed it down. So essentially what we're doing is giving amnesty to, and it's really important that we put this out there on because of the rebuttable presumptions that if it hasn't been enforced in the last, I believe it was 5 years, that if we can't find a permit for it, that they would legally be permissible because we can't locate the document. There's been many in the community that say that's not right, just because they've been doing it wrong for so long. However, courts have ruled and we've lost. In fact, most jurisdictions, I believe, have lost. And so we're going to tie up incredibly valuable resources to pursue litigation and enforcement on each and every one of those locations that we have vetted and spent years trying to find. The document just simply doesn't exist, and for one reason or another. And so we're giving amnesty to those particular signs. That makes sense from... I wasn't going to go there, but the undocumented signs. Thank you. So we're complying with the law, right? So that's right. Okay. So yes, and killing me. And if they have another sign now, so I'm not even going to go there. So that makes sense, and I support staff's suggestion on that. What I have trouble with, and I think I've got a solution for, that if they are a permitted sign, but they're non-conforming, and let me just draw a picture, if I could, for some folks who are following this. If they have a permit for a 300 square foot sign, and they're not conforming to their permit, and they happen to put up a 500 square foot sign, if they take it down under the takedown policy, they get 0 credit because they weren't conforming to their permit. But if they took it down and they never had a permit to begin with, they do get credit because we're going to allow them in the amnesty program. So I get that. So to solve that, I would suggest we do give them credit for a takedown. They don't have to bring it into conformance and then take it down. We give them credit for what was permitted. So if they have, for example, a 500 square foot sign, but they had a permit for 300 square feet, and they ended up doing that as part of their takedown and exchange, plus the beautification program, they get the credit for the 300. I would also suggest and go further that staff look at, it may be just easier, and this is what I would support, and talking to some folks in the city attorney's office as well, is that if we're going to have an amnesty program for the, in Mr. Cedillo's term, undocumented signs, unpermitted signs, then we have an amnesty for the signs that are non-conforming as well. Because by the time we go out, quite frankly, and we're talking about some that might be a foot higher, some that might be, and they're not double-faced, that they should have been single-faced, and we can't prove. Each one of those are going to be tied up in enforcement, in litigation, in review, and take decades to straighten out as well. So my suggestion is to allow what has been up is all falls under the amnesty program. And I think that would be more than reasonable and fair, with the idea moving forward as well that it's our hope, or I would think our hope, to have some type of takedown program in the long run anyway. So I'd like that to come back as an option. On the digital off-site signs outside of sign districts, so this falls out, really this is going to go towards your other memo. This is not the ordinance. This is going to be your October 10th memo that lays out the options. What I'd like to see, I think we've been doing option 1 already, which is do nothing. So we've done a good job at that. So let's explore the other two. What I'd like to see, and staff has made some very good recommendations for only allowing the public placement. But there have been some other jurisdictions that have worked it out with private as well. And maybe if we look at both options but bifurcate them, and they could run on different parallel tracks and not combine them, and saying if we can't do both, forget it, we can't do anything. Maybe we look at doing both. So we come up, if you could come back with the changes of those recommendations that I previously stated on the ordinance issues, but then on the option issues for the digital offsite, come back with both ideas, and we flush them out as separate policies to look at both public and private, not just doing one. I don't think they have to be option 1, 2, and 3. Forget option 1, because that's just do nothing. Option 2 and 3, it doesn't have to be an option 2 or 3. It could be 2 and 3. And so I think we look at both. It's probably, from everything we've heard so far, it may be faster to get option 2 done and easier, but that doesn't mean we should abandon the idea of option 3. We can continue those discussions and look at those opportunities as well and get feedback from the industry and the communities as well. So my recommendation would be to explore both. Abandon option 1, look at option 2 and 3, and come back just separating them into 2 separate reports. Those would be my suggestions. I know this will take a little more time to flush out the changes on the ordinances, because I think the current ordinance, some of those ideas should be vetted with the city attorney, because as I said in my opening, there's no question in my mind that if we don't do this correctly, then it will face litigation. And I think we've been there and done that. And I don't want to move this thing forward, but I want to do it right. And so I think taking the ordinance back to the city attorney with some of those suggestions to vet those, talking to some of the industry folks in the community, bringing those back, and then on a separate track, again on the options, looking at 2 and 3 separately.
Sounds good. Mr. Cedillo.
I just want to make sure, and I appreciate that very prudent, as we were talking earlier in the week, that we get a legal analysis. But in addition, I'd like us to, I don't know whose office does this, but we get a solid fiscal analysis as well. And so we can try to get some.
In the planning department report, they noted that if you chose options 2 or 3, there would be a fiscal impact of $200,000 for the sign unit. So maybe you would like to request the CAO to report back as to that fiscal impact and where the $200,000 would come from.
Right. If not, I'm sure Mr. Kokorin will take care of that. But yes, I'm interested in a fiscal analysis, not just those costs, but also benefits for the city. So I want a cost benefit or ROI or whatever the appropriate term may be, but one that talks to the city so that we can monetize a little more concretely what these discussions that we've
That directive could also be referred to the CAO, Councilman.
I just wanted to point out, as far as our existing budget, we have 5 different position authorities for a sign unit to undertake this particular work program. In addition, we have in our current budget $400,000 provided by the council for contractual services. And so our suggestion would be to transfer $200,000 of the $400,000 from contractual services to the salaries account, and then that would enable us to get started on the sign unit. That would provide us with approximate 6 months of funding for the sign unit once we were able to staff up and we have the current list. So we do have some seed money within the current budget to get started on it. Not to complete it, but to get started on it.
Is that premature?
Well, in either event, if they have the monies, it'd probably be prudent for the CAO to allocate those funds to the appropriate account and for them to be involved. So,
right, because given the nature of this dynamic, there may be, we may want to create a scenario where this is not a general fund cost on the city at all, and that this actually comes from a certain franchise. And so, in terms of bringing revenue to the city, that may be something that helps in general.
Sure.
And so, I would be interested in seeing all the costs laid out that the city could incur, and then a discussion about where the revenue may come from. And so, whatever is the appropriate body here in the city to give that fiscal analysis, and then a broader, as we do when we do, let's say, tax credits for the movie industry. How we talk about the job stocking. There's a lot of representatives from organized labor here today, and all their statements are appreciated, but we'd like to hone it down a little bit so we can get some real numbers on this.
Sure. So in the directives in the committee report, we can include that directive to the CAO, Councilman, to look at all those issues.
Anything else, Mr. Cedillo?
In addition to instruct the CLA with the assistance of the Planning Department to report on a CUP process that would allow for the reallocation of agreements for off-site digital signs that are outside of adopted sign districts. And the program should take into account the appropriate takedown ratio, recommendations on assessment of the community benefit, restrictions on locations per zone, including distance from neighboring signs and illumination, and a recommendation of a cap citywide, and then addressing questions of public-private.
Great, thank you. All right, so we have a number of suggestions by Mr. Cedillo and Mr. Englander. The idea, I'm going to add a couple of more, but the idea is to come back with a report back on these, and then at the next meeting, we're going to decide and direct that the additional changes to the ordinance be made so that then we could refer it to council at the next meeting. But for now, we will incorporate those report backs that Mr. Cedillo made, the report backs that Mr. Englander requested, which included, I think his first one was really getting to at least a net reduction and community benefits for the static signs and the digital, and I think that would help us get to a higher proportion of a ratio there, which is what I think we would like to see as we move forward. He also talked about the on-site digital, the sign adjustments. He mentioned the. You got everything that you could get to them? Excellent. Let me add this. If we could also move a request that the city attorney clarify the status of pre-1986 mural sign permits, especially those created around the 1984 Olympics known as the Berry Blue signs. We could get a report back on that as well when we get this back. I'd like to further request that the revisions made reflect the concerns of Councilmember O'Farrell in his letter submitted today addressing digital signage on historic properties. And we could also add to that the Labange request to exempt museums and cultural institutions to ensure continued use of traditional exhibition announcements and sponsorships. We get a report back on that, and I think that will do it. We did this one right. Oh, finally, request that the city attorney clarify provisions for on-site signage on adjacent easements to access a property. I know this has been an issue for the Kaisersmartin Square project in Council District 10, so we could get a report back on that as well.
The other issue was the updating of the grandfathering date. It's currently December the 6th, 2011. That had been discussed before. In prior actions of this committee, they had updated the grandfathering date to reflect the most recent action of the committee. So that would be today's date, December the 16th, 2014.
Thank you. So if we get those report backs and do an analysis of what it means, pros and cons, cost benefits, and also we will incorporate whatever language we get at the next meeting, insert that into the ordinances, and then submit that to council at the next meeting.
Just one point of clarification. For the different directives we have before the committee, the ordinance actually prepared by the city attorney's office is the instruction of the committee to actually work with the city attorney's office on amending the actual language of the ordinance as opposed to merely report back following these instructions.
Well, let's report back first.
Okay.
And then at that meeting, before it gets to council, we will give very clear direction as to what the amendments to the ordinance should be before it gets to council.
Okay.
Thank you. Great. Thank you very much. And any other questions or comments on this? Any other items remaining on the agenda?
Public comment, Councilman.
I don't believe there are any public comment cards. Let me double check. Okay. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.